Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. Everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captain of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I'm proud to introduce you to Pam Hall, an environmental consulting firm executive whose interest in the biological world has led her 100% employee-owned company to focus on corporate responsibility and service to the community. That is one heck of a mission. So tell us more about the mission of Norman Doe Associates.
Well, the mission since we were founded in 1970 is to use really sound science or good science, and work in partnership with clients, with the community, with the regulators, other government officials, to try to come up with approaches that allow projects to move forward, but at the same time minimizing and protecting the environment. So we try to, it's very much of a collaborative approach, and it's a science approach where we're not an engineering firm, so that we don't build anything or whatever. We just focus on the environmental impacts or requirements of various projects. So it's a very focused, specialized company.
It certainly is. It sounds like it's when corporate responsibility meets community service. This is what you get. You get Norman Doe Associates.
Yes, that's probably that's probably correct. Yes.
So Pam, how did your career grow into the executive role that you hold today?
Well, it probably started. Let me start over, okay?
Of course.
Because this is it's an interesting question. And my career started really with the emergence of the environmental industry in 1970. And I was in graduate school in the 60s. And so I experienced everything that happened in the 60s. And really the environmental movement was one of the social movements that came out of the 1960s. And EPA was founded in 1970. It was the first Earth Day. I was in a PhD program at the university in science, in zoology, marine biology, really. And I decided to take a leave of absence and work for a couple of years for that program. And I got into really the beginnings of the environmental industry as a scientist. And then from there, I'm trying to keep the story short. I went back in the evenings while I was working, and I got a business degree. I figured, well, this industry is brand new, and there are lots of really smart scientists, and here I am trying to do this stuff. So I got a business degree to try to do my job better. And as soon as I did that, the company made me a VP. It was still a relatively small company. And then when Thermo Fisher Scientific was the company that bought us in 1988, they made me the president and CEO. So it was sort of a fast track, partly because of my interest in the emerging industry. So
I find that very fascinating. And as I think about the growth of the environmental industry and just people being conscious, can you share with me what kinds of consulting advice you actually provide regarding the environment?
Well, because we're all scientists, the consulting advice really has to do with the natural resources or water quality or whatever. So the consulting advice might be, and it could be for private sector clients, it could be for the public sector clients like EPA. Sometimes we work for nonprofits where a lot of that work might be pro bono, but it could be something like going out and determining how valuable a wetland is, and how to avoid impacts to it, or going out, we have a bunch of ocean going vessels and going out and sampling the fisheries to see what the fisheries populations look like. We had a big project in the Hudson River for years looking at striped bass and monitoring that population because there were concerns that it could be impacted by a lot of the discharges into the Hudson River. So most recently, we're involved with renewable energy and looking at how to site. There, we're working for the federal government in these large tracts of ocean. Where are the areas that concentrate, for example, a species of whale or turtles or whatever one is interested in, and how to avoid those areas when siting some of the offshore wind farms. So it's that type of work that we do for all types of clients. So
that sounds extremely interesting to me, because it's as if corporate responsibility will meet corporate sustainability.
right.
And the impact all of that has on our environment, which leads me to ask you, what are some good ways that the viewers can act as responsible stewards of our world?
Well, there are always the things that are brought up, like reuse and recycle and energy efficiency and just daily things that one can do to try to minimize their impact on the world. I mean, I look at it from a more maybe strategic point of view, where I think people have to really understand how they impact the environment and how they fit into the whole sort of ecosystem of the planet or the web of life. I mean, that I'm a scientist, so that's how I look at it. And how can you explain this? I think having people have a better understanding, and having children and their parents and whatever somehow have access to some environmental education when their children are young, so that it's it's part of how people think. So I think that's really key.
Making it a part of the DNA from the time you are a young person, and understanding that science is not stagnant. It is
Right.
constantly growing and changing.
Yeah, all the time. So, and I volunteer on a lot of nonprofit boards, and I've been on the Seacoast Science Center. That's the Seacoast of New Hampshire Science Center board. Environmental education is a big part of that. And now I'm on the Southeast Land Trust, and that will become a big part of environmental education will become a big part of their mission as they move forward too. So
I so admire you as a fellow woman executive, because I understand that you transformed Norman Doe Associates from being owned by a Fortune 500 company, as you told me earlier, into a 100% employee-owned company. That is such an amazing feat. Can you share with me that process and what it has meant to you over these years?
well, it's probably one of the most important things that I've done. And I just kept thinking, these professional services companies, whether it's environmental consulting or some other type of professional services, I mean, the people are the assets, and we want to keep our good people. And yes, we pay them, and they may get bonuses, and they have health insurance. But how to create something that helps them, that gives them long-term value in the company? And so, setting it up as an employee-owned company was something I wanted to do really when we were still part of Thermal Electron. I'm one of those people that I'll probably, work or do volunteer work until I fall over.
Well, that is wonderful for all of us that you're working for, and we do appreciate it. Pam, what's the one thing you'd like the viewer of this video feature to walk away with?
I thought about a whole bunch of things. Something as simple as humility is a virtue, but I think, and this is probably a little bit more focused on women, and it has to do with just taking on the challenges that are there. I think there's a sort of a fear of failure sometimes with women, and we are judged a little bit uh, more than men, I think, still. But just go for it and take. Don't be afraid of failing once in a while. That's how you learn, and then you can learn from that and take on new challenges and that's what I've done my whole life. I've never had a fear of taking. I'd do any job that came along that needed to be done, and it was usually picking up somebody else's mess when I was younger.
Well, listen, let me tell you something. You've been picking up messes, but you've also turned some setbacks into the setups for great successes. So I really congratulate you on what you've done with Norman Doe Associates and what your colleagues are doing for the rest of us. My very favorite quote in this regard is, the earth is what we all have in common. And so if we just remember that, we will be good stewards for her richness. And I thank you for leading the way.
Well, thank you.